Edwards Air Force Base, California, March 15th, 1991. Through frost-covered observation glass, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Vuong watched 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers taxi across the runway like vessels returning from the dead. Aircraft that hadn't touched American soil since the Eisenhower administration now gleamed under sodium lights, their crews moving with the fluid precision of sleepwalkers. From the depths of my collection, the War Maestro brings you a tale where some missing persons cases should stay closed, and certain family reunions come with a terrible price. The lead pilot emerged from his cockpit moving like a marionette, every gesture unnaturally fluid. Lieutenant Charles Taylor's face held no expression whatsoever. Not confusion, not relief, not human emotion of any kind. His eyes tracked across Edwards Air Force Base with the cold assessment of a predator memorizing terrain. Behind him, 4 other airmen descended with identical robotic movements, their heads turning in perfect unison to scan the modern facility. Vuong's breath caught. These weren't men returning from a mission. These were weapons being delivered. "Jesus Christ," whispered Sergeant Martinez, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Ma'am, you need to see their radio transcript." She snatched the paper from his trembling hands. Radio man Joseph Bossie's final transmission, recorded 3 minutes ago, made her stomach drop into free fall. Fort Lauderdale Tower, this is Flight 19th. Request immediate contact with Patricia Vuong. Confirmed daughter of Major David Vuong, MIA Vietnam, 1968. We have his final orders. Her father had been missing for 23 years. These men supposedly disappeared 3 years before her birth. Yet somehow they knew her name, her rank, her family tragedy. Taylor reached into his flight suit and withdrew a human tooth, yellowed, with silver fillings from dental work that wouldn't exist until the 1960s. He examined it with scientific curiosity, then placed it carefully between his lips like communion wafer. His throat worked as he swallowed, and for one horrific moment, his face showed pure ecstasy. The other pilots began the same ritual. Each man produced teeth, different sizes, different ages, some still bloody. They consumed them with religious reverence while staring directly at the observation tower, directly at Vuong. "Ma'am," Martinez's voice barely functioned. Bossie just transmitted again. He says they've been collecting teeth from their families for 46 years. Says they're hungry for more. Taylor's head snapped up toward their window with inhuman speed. His mouth opened in what should have been a smile, revealing gaps where his own teeth had been. Dark fluid leaked from the empty sockets as he mouthed words that made Vuong's blood freeze. "Hello, Patricia. Daddy's home." The base commander's voice crackled through the intercom. "Colonel Vuong, report to Hangar 18 immediately. These assets have been waiting specifically for you." Hangar 18 stretched before Vuong like a cathedral of secrets, its cavernous interior swallowing sound and light. Emergency Klieg lights cast harsh shadows across concrete that seemed to absorb warmth. The 5 pilots sat in regulation chairs positioned in clinical alignment, their posture identical, backs straight, hands folded, eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond the present. Lieutenant Charles Taylor spoke without prompting, his voice carrying the mechanical cadence of a man reciting from memory. Flight 19 departed Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale at 1400 hours, December 5th, 1945. Training exercise Able 7. Navigation problem developed over the Bahamas. We have been returning home ever since. Vuong settled into her chair across the metal table, recording equipment humming between them. Standard debriefing protocol demanded she establish timeline, verify identities, assess mental state, but nothing about these men registered as standard. Their breathing synchronized, When one blinked, they all blinked. When Taylor's left hand twitched, 4 other left hands mirrored the movement with disturbing accuracy. 46 years is a long flight, Lieutenant, she said, testing for reaction. Taylor's head tilted with reptilian curiosity. Time moves differently when you're following orders. We've been very busy completing our missions. What missions? Radio man Joseph Bossy leaned forward, his boyish face animated with enthusiasm that made Vuong's skin crawl. We've been visiting families, ma'am, delivering messages, making sure everyone remembers their boys who never came home. His smile revealed teeth too white, too sharp, filed to points that caught the fluorescent light. Vuong's pen stopped moving. What kind of messages? The personal kind, Taylor answered, reaching into his flight jacket with deliberate slowness. He withdrew a leather logbook, its pages yellowed with age but somehow pristine. Would you like to review our flight records? Every mission is documented. Every target eliminated according to specifications. She accepted the logbook with steady hands, though her pulse hammered against her wrists. The first entry, dated December 6, 1945, one day after their disappearance, made her breath catch. Mission 001, eliminated Margaret Taylor, spouse of flight leader. Target was asking questions about husband's disappearance. Witnesses terminated. Neighbor Mrs. Henderson, postman Richards. Clean kill, no survivors to spread information. The entries continued in Taylor's precise handwriting, each mission dated sequentially through decades. Names, addresses, methods of elimination. Wives who wouldn't stop searching. Children who grew up asking uncomfortable questions. Investigators who dug too deep. All terminated with clinical efficiency. This is impossible, Vuong whispered, her voice barely audible. Your wife, Margaret, lived until 1978. She remarried, had children. Taylor's expression never changed. Multiple targets required multiple approaches. We eliminated 17 different versions of Margaret across various timelines. Each one learned to stop asking questions eventually. Bossy giggled, a sound like breaking glass. My mother was the hardest. Took 43 attempts before she learned to forget she ever had a son named Joseph. The logbook trembled in Vuong's hands as she flipped pages. Mission after mission, family after family, systematically erased from existence. But the final entries made her blood freeze. Recent missions, names she recognized from her own investigation into missing aircraft. Mission 2847, eliminated David Vuong, Major, USAF. Target discovered Flight 19 operating in Vietnamese airspace. Recruited as asset, now assigned to special projects. Her father's signature appeared below Taylor's, confirming his participation in subsequent family eliminations. He joined us willingly, Taylor said, reading her expression. Once he understood the importance of operational security. Your father has been quite effective at silencing military families who ask too many questions. Vuong's hands shook as she turned the logbook's final pages, each entry more horrifying than the last. The paper felt unnaturally warm, as if the ink still carried body heat from freshly spilled blood. Her father's handwriting appeared with increasing frequency, his missions growing more elaborate, more personal, more targeted at people she recognized. Special Project Homecoming commenced January 1991. She read aloud, her voice barely functioning. Target, Patricia Vuong, Lieutenant Colonel, Edwards, AFB Intelligence. Subject has investigated missing aircraft program for 7 years. Elimination required before promotion to Pentagon oversight position. Taylor's smile never reached his eyes. Your father volunteered for this assignment, said he wanted to handle family business personally. The hangar's temperature seemed to plummet. Emergency lighting flickered overhead. casting dancing shadows that moved independently of their sources. Bossy began humming, a lullaby Vuong recognized from her childhood, one her father sang during thunderstorms when she couldn't sleep. "He's been watching you for months," Bossy said, his boyish features twisting into something predatory. "Following your routine, learning your weaknesses. Did you notice the man at your coffee shop? The janitor at your apartment building? The mechanic who fixed your car last week?" Each question hit like physical blows. She had noticed the same face appearing in different contexts, had dismissed it as coincidence, military paranoia, post-traumatic hypervigilance from too many classified briefings. "He's been practicing," Taylor continued, opening a second logbook filled with sketches and photographs. Images of her jogging route, her grocery store, her favorite restaurant. Detailed floor plans of her apartment with entry points marked in red ink. "Your father wants this elimination to be perfect. He's very proud of his daughter's accomplishments, wants to honor them properly." The photographs grew more intimate. Vuong sleeping, Vuong showering, Vuong crying over her father's memorial service 5 years ago, taken from inside her own bedroom. The camera angles suggested someone had been living in her walls for weeks. Gunner Harold Simpson spoke for the first time, his voice rusty from disuse. "Major Vuong requested permission to keep trophies. Your teeth, specifically. Says they'll help him remember his little girl after the mission concludes." Vuong's chair scraped backward across concrete as she stood, survival instincts overriding shock. But the hangar doors had sealed without sound, massive steel barriers sliding into place with hydraulic finality. The observation windows went dark. Even the recording equipment died, its red lights fading to black. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" The voice came from behind her, familiar and wrong. Major David Vuong stepped from the shadows between aircraft, his flight suit pristine despite 23 years of supposed death. His face showed the same drilled uniformity as the others, but his eyes held recognition that made her stomach clench with terror. "Hello, Patricia. Daddy really did come home." He moved toward her with predatory grace, one hand extended in greeting, the other gripping a set of dental pliers still slick with fluid from recent use. "I've missed you so much. We have so much catching up to do before your mission ends." The 5 pilots rose in perfect synchronization, forming a circle around her with military precision. Each man withdrew identical tools, pliers, bone saws, collection bags marked with her name. They had prepared for this moment, with the thoroughness that made Flight 19 legendary. "Please don't struggle," her father whispered, his voice carrying the tenderness she remembered from bedtime stories. "I want your final moments to be special, just like when you were my little girl." Vuong's Air Force training kicked in as her father advanced, muscle memory overriding emotional paralysis. She rolled behind a steel support beam, her sidearm clearing its holster with practiced speed. The concrete floor offered no comfort, but it provided angle and distance from the converging circle of her family's killers. "Patricia, don't make this harder than necessary," her father called out, his voice carrying the patient authority she remembered from childhood discipline. "I've studied your combat record, 23 confirmed kills in Desert Storm. You understand the necessity of following orders." She steadied her breathing, focusing on tactical assessment, rather than the impossibility of aiming at her dead father. 6 hostiles, enclosed space, no backup, single exit sealed, standard urban combat scenarios. Except the enemy wore faces she'd mourned for decades. "The Air Force taught you well," Major Vuong continued, circling her position with calculated steps. "But they never prepared you for family loyalty tests. Pull that trigger, sweetheart, and you'll be killing the man who taught you to ride a bicycle." The psychological warfare struck deeper than physical threat. Her finger trembled against the trigger as memories flooded back. Her father lifting her after scraped knees, helping with homework, promising to return from Vietnam with stories and souvenirs. The man stalking her now wore his face, carried his voice, but moved with the cold efficiency of a trained assassin. Taylor's radio crackled to life, filling the hangar with static and distant voices. Control to Elimination Team Alpha. Confirm target acquisition. Secondary assets are in position for Phase 2 operations. What's Phase 2? Vuong demanded, using her command voice, despite her cornered position. Bossy giggled from somewhere in the darkness beyond the aircraft. Family reunions, ma'am. Every military investigator who ever asked questions about missing aircraft. We've been collecting their relatives for months. Your neighbor, Mrs. Evans? Your college roommate, Deanna? Your nephew, Tommy, from San Diego? The names hit like sniper rounds. People she cared about, people who had nothing to do with her investigation, now targets because of her curiosity. The scope of this elimination program extended far beyond simple operational security. It was systematic eradication of entire family trees. Tommy's only 12 years old, she whispered, horror overwhelming tactical thinking. Her father's shadow fell across her hiding spot. Children adapt quickly to new circumstances. We find them quite useful for recruitment once proper conditioning begins. Tommy shows excellent potential for future operations. The casual mention of child recruitment broke something fundamental in Vuong's military discipline. She came out of cover firing, her service pistol barking in the enclosed space. Her father moved with inhuman speed, each bullet passing through empty air where he'd been microseconds before. Disappointing, he said, appearing behind her with impossible velocity. Steel fingers closed around her wrist, crushing bone with hydraulic pressure. Her weapon clattered across concrete as she screamed, the sound echoing off hangar walls like a condemned woman's final prayer. Phase 2 commences in 36 hours, Taylor announced into his radio. Confirm all family assets are secured for processing. Begin psychological preparation protocols immediately. Her father lifted her by the throat, his grip cutting off oxygen with clinical accuracy. Sleep now, Patricia. When you wake up, you'll understand how much your family truly loves you, and how much your country needs soldiers who never question orders. Darkness closed around her vision as consciousness fled, but not before she heard the hangar doors grinding open and the sound of multiple vehicles arriving outside. More teams, more families being reunited with their missing soldiers. The last thing she saw was a wall covered with photographs, hundreds of military personnel marked recruited, their surviving relatives marked eliminated, and her own face circled in red with tomorrow's date written below. Consciousness returned, like drowning in reverse, darkness lifting to reveal fluorescent hell. Vuong found herself strapped to a dental chair in what had once been Edward's medical facility, now converted into something resembling a veterinary laboratory. Stainless steel tables gleamed under harsh lights, each surface covered with extraction tools, arranged with ritualistic care. Her father sat beside her, methodically sharpening dental instruments while humming the same lullaby from her childhood. Each scrape of metal against whetstone sent ice through her nervous system. Behind him, monitors displayed live feeds from dozens of locations, suburban homes where families went about their evening routines, unaware of the figures watching from shadows. "You're awake," he said without looking up from his work. "Good. I want you conscious for the education portion of your processing." The monitors showed timestamps from across the country, kitchen windows in Ohio where a woman prepared dinner while a figure crouched in her backyard, a playground in Texas where children played as uniformed men observed from parked cars, a college dormitory in Florida where students studied while maintenance workers with military posture cleaned hallways, they'd cleaned 3 times already. Deanna Jones, your former roommate, her father narrated, indicating the dormitory feed, currently pursuing her master's degree in journalism. She's been asking university librarians about military aircraft disappearances. Very thorough researcher, very inconvenient. Vuong struggled against her restraints, leather straps cutting into wrists already bruised from her father's grip. She doesn't know anything about my investigation. Leave her alone. Knowledge isn't the issue, sweetheart. Curiosity is the disease we're contracted to cure. He held up a pair of modified pliers, their jaws fitted with tiny cameras. These feed directly to our psychological research division. We've learned that family members experience deeper trauma when they watch their loved one's final moments in high definition. The monitor switched to a suburban kitchen where Mrs. Evans stirred soup while glancing nervously at windows. A timer in the corner showed 18 minutes until extraction commence. Your neighbor noticed Flight 19's arrival yesterday, her father explained, testing the plier's grip on a practice tooth mounted in clay. She called her son at the Pentagon, mentioned seeing World War II aircraft at Edwards. Simple civic concern became national security threat within 6 hours. Vuong's throat constricted as she realized the scope of their surveillance network. How many innocent observations had triggered elimination orders? How many casual conversations had sentenced entire families to systematic torture? The beauty of our program, her father continued, is that we don't just eliminate security risks. We generate new recruitment material. Mrs. Evans's son will receive detailed footage of his mother's processing. His choice becomes simple: join our operation willingly, or watch his wife and children receive identical treatment. A new monitor activated, showing a young boy's bedroom. Tommy, her 12-year-old nephew, slept peacefully, while a figure in military fatigues stood beside his bed, measuring his skull with calipers. Children's cranial capacity determines their usefulness for long-term operations, her father said, noting her horrified expression. Tommy's score is exceptionally high. He'll make an excellent interrogator once we complete his conditioning. Very gentle touch with extraction tools. Natural empathy makes psychological torture more effective. The restraints held firm despite Vuong's desperate struggles. Around the facility, she could hear other voices, screaming, pleading, the systematic sounds of families being processed according to protocol. Each cry represented another investigator's loved ones paying for someone's curiosity about missing aircraft. Her father leaned close, his breath carrying the metallic scent of blood and antiseptic. Your turn now, Patricia. I'm going to extract every memory of your investigation, every file you've hidden, every contact who helped your research, and you're going to tell me everything, because the alternative is watching Tommy learn to use these tools on his own mother. The monitor showed her sister-in-law, Tommy's mother, being dragged from her car in a darkened parking garage. Her muffled screams echoed through the facility's sound system as uniformed figures carried her toward an identical processing room. Choose quickly, sweetheart, her father whispered, placing the camera-equipped pliers against her cheek. Family loyalty works both ways. Stop! The command echoed through the processing facility with absolute authority. Her father's hand froze inches from Vuong's face, the camera-equipped pliers trembling in his grip. Every monitor simultaneously displayed the same image: the Edwards Air Force Base commander, Colonel Marcus Webb, entering the facility with formal exactitude. Release the restraints, Major, Webb ordered, his voice carrying the cold satisfaction of a chess master revealing checkmate. Colonel Vuong has earned the right to understand the full scope of her family's contribution to national security. The leather straps fell away, circulation returning to Vuong's wrists in painful waves. She sat up slowly, studying Webb's face for signs of the inhuman conditioning that marked the others. But his eyes held only human malice, the calculated cruelty of a man who'd chosen this path deliberately. 47 years of perfecting this program, Webb said, settling into a chair with relaxed confidence. Started with Project Blue Book, expanded through Vietnam, refined during Desert Storm. We've eliminated over 3,000 security risks and recruited their family members for specialized operations. The monitors shifted to display organizational charts spanning decades. Names, faces, elimination dates, recruitment success rates. A corporate structure built on systematic family destruction, with Webb's signature authorizing every operation since 1973. Flight 19 was never missing, Webb continued, savoring Vuong's horrified realization. They were our prototype, the first successful conversion of military personnel into perfect elimination assets. No conscience, no hesitation, complete loyalty to mission parameters. Her father stood at attention beside Webb's chair, his eyes vacant as a marionette awaiting commands. The man who'd taught her to throw baseballs and helped with algebra homework had been transformed into a weapon designed specifically to torture his own daughter. The temporal displacement was accidental initially, Webb explained, consulting a tablet that displayed real-time family locations. Experimental radar systems at Edwards created a temporal loop during Flight 19's final mission. We discovered we could pull aircraft and their crews from specific moments in history, condition them through repeated psychological trauma, then deploy them against their own families across multiple timelines. Vuong's mind reeled as the impossible became logical, not time travel, temporal imprisonment. These men had been trapped in repeating loops of their final mission, forced to experience their deaths hundreds of times until their sanity shattered completely. Your investigation threatened our expansion into civilian oversight, Webb continued. Pentagon promotion would have given you access to classified budgets. You'd have discovered our recruitment of congressional family members, Supreme Court relatives, presidential grandchildren. Democracy requires careful management, Colonel. The monitors displayed a horrifying gallery. Political figures whose missing relatives had been converted into leverage assets. Senators who voted according to Webb's guidance rather than risk watching their children processed. Judges whose rulings protected military secrecy after viewing footage of their spouses' dental extractions. Every conspiracy theory about government control is true, Webb said with professorial pride. We simply use family bonds as the control mechanism. Love makes people wonderfully predictable. Vuong found her voice despite the magnitude of revelation. How many people know? 12 individuals across 3 agencies, each one recruited through family-based leverage, each one absolutely loyal because their children, grandchildren, or siblings remain in our care. Webb smiled with paternal warmth. Soon you'll join that exclusive group, Patricia. Your nephew Tommy shows remarkable aptitude for psychological manipulation. The monitor showed Tommy in a training facility, his small hands practicing with miniature torture instruments, while adult instructors provided gentle encouragement. His natural empathy was being weaponized through systematic desensitization, turning childhood compassion into clinical efficiency. Your choice is simple, Webb concluded, standing with ceremonial gravity. Accept recruitment and help us maintain American security through family-based asset management, or watch your entire family tree undergo processing while you remain conscious to observe every detail. Her father lifted the camera pliers again, their drilled coordination reflecting years of conditioning. But for 1 microsecond, she glimpsed something human flickering behind his eyes, a father's desperate love, trapped inside a monster's programming. What's it going to be, sweetheart? Webb asked. Loyalty to family, or loyalty to principles that will get everyone you love tortured to death? Vuong's mind calculated odds with desperate clarity. Tommy's training footage showed systematic brutalization disguised as patriotic education. Her sister-in-law's screams echoed through facility speakers as processing teams demonstrated extraction techniques. Every person she'd ever loved was becoming ammunition in Webb's war against human conscience. "I accept," she whispered, the words tasting like ashes and betrayal. Webb's smile carried the warmth of a grandfather approving a child's career choice. "Excellent decision, Colonel. Your recruitment orientation begins immediately." He gestured toward her father, who moved forward with surgical precision. "Major Vuong will handle your preliminary conditioning. Family bonds make the process more emotionally impactful." The camera pliers descended toward her temple with mechanical inevitability. But instead of pain, Vuong felt the cold kiss of metal against skin, followed by her father's voice, barely audible, meant only for her ears. "Forgive me, Patricia. I never forgot who I was." The facility's emergency lighting died simultaneously across all sections. In absolute darkness, she heard Webb shouting orders, security teams mobilizing, the distinctive whine of temporal displacement machinery powering down. Her father's hand found hers in the blackness, his grip conveying desperate urgency. "I've been sabotaging their operations for months," he breathed against her ear, "feeding false intelligence, misdirecting elimination teams, protecting families they marked for processing. But tonight's our only chance to broadcast the truth." Emergency power restored partial illumination, revealing chaos throughout the facility. Flight 19's pilots moved with renewed purpose, not Webb's programmed efficiency, but the coordinated teamwork of men reclaiming their humanity. Taylor stood over Webb's unconscious form, his face showing emotion for the first time since landing. 60 seconds until temporal containment fails," Bossy announced from the control station, his boyish features animated with fierce determination. Every missing pilot from the last 40 years is about to wake up simultaneously. Webb's conditioning breaks when the time loop collapses. Through facility windows, Vuong watched impossible aircraft materializing across Edwards runways. Dozens of planes from different eras, Vietnam-era fighters, Korean war bombers, Cold War reconnaissance jets, all piloted by men who'd been trapped in Webb's psychological hell for decades. The roar of engines filled the desert night as an entire air force of the disappeared prepared for their final mission. "We're broadcasting everything," her father said, indicating banks of recording equipment. "Every file, every elimination record, every political figure under Webb's control. Military families worldwide will know what happened to their missing soldiers within 6 hours." The monitors displayed incoming transmissions from across the globe. Missing airmen in Russia, China, Britain, all waking from identical conditioning programs, all broadcasting evidence of their government's family-based control networks. Webb's American prototype had been replicated internationally, creating a shadow war fought entirely through systematized love. Webb stirred, blood streaming from Taylor's enthusiastic interrogation techniques. "You've doomed yourselves," he gasped, his authority crumbling like wet paper. "Every government on Earth will hunt you now. There's nowhere to hide from what you've unleashed." "We're not hiding," Vuong replied, helping her father to his feet. "We're going home." Through the facility's shattered windows, she watched Flight 19 taxi toward takeoff position, their engines carrying the sound of freedom after decades of imprisonment. But their destination wasn't the past. It was every military base, every government facility, every black site where families remained separated by artificial time loops. The rescue operation had just begun. As dawn broke over Edwards Air Force Base, emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming worldwide. Military families learned the truth about their missing loved ones. Politicians discovered their carefully hidden leverage had been exposed. And in living rooms across America, people began asking the most dangerous question of all: who else has been using our families against us? The missing were coming home, and they were bringing answers. If Flight 19's eternal patrol sent chills down your spine, it's time to join the War Maestro's ranks. Check your family photos tonight, make sure everyone's teeth are still their own, and subscribe to unlock more classified horrors from military history. Hit that notification bell, because you'll want to know when the next missing squadron returns home. Share this story with fellow truth seekers who understand that some family reunions should never happen. Remember, not everyone who goes missing stays gone, and not everyone who comes home is still family.